Привет, друзья! Как дела? My name is Fedor and welcome back to Be Fluent in Russian podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about my journey from beginner to fluent in English and how I did it, how long it took me. Because a lot of the times people ask me, about my personal journey because I'm a teacher. I teach Russian, and a lot of things that I teach about, in fact, a lot of lessons, a lot of approach to teaching, I got it from learning English and seeing what worked for me. I want to replicate that and to teach Russian, students that as well. Let me move this mic a little bit further away. Kind of too close to me. And the teachings that we spread, I was okay. Let me find my approach to teaching Russian, and then I went on YouTube to look at other channels and to see how they're doing it. I was like, no, this is not the way to do it. And then the more I started discovering different channels, different courses, different books, I was like, no, this is not the way to go about Russian. A lot of people seem to teach Russian as if they're teaching a Russian person. Like they'll give examples or they'll explain grammar things through other concepts in Russian that a learner may not even know. And also a great influence on my teaching was my now wife, then girlfriend. She was learning Russian, and I would explain something in one way, and she would look at me, stare me in the eyes with blank face, with I don't understand what you're saying, and then I had to redo it, or I had to find common language with her, and that's how I developed my overall approach to teaching. But today is not the lesson about that, but it's a podcast about that, but it's a podcast about my own journey and how I went from beginner, just starting out in English, to being fluent in English. Exact step-by-step process. And I'll also talk about mistakes that I've made along the way so you guys can avoid them. And if you are doing something that I consider a mistake, you can change your approach and just, learn much faster. So I started learning English before school. I started learning English when I was 5. We had this like a preschool English school, which in actuality, later I found out that it's just pretty much same exact teacher that taught at school, just doing extracurricular stuff for extra money, but pretty much the content of the teachings was the same as in school. So they're just pretty much charging extracurricular money for pretty much nothing if you think about it. So that was my first year of learning English. Then, of course, first grade, we don't have a foreign language. Second grade, I think that's when we start. So I had 1 year before school, 1 year of a break, and then I started from the second grade, all the way to the 11th grade. In Russia, we only have 11 grades before we go on to the university. And so I was learning, English from second grade all the way to 11th when I was in school. I would say that until the 9th grade, I didn't make much progress. So think about it. I was 5, that was 1 year. First grade, second grade, third. So 10 years total, actually 9 years total, I was learning English without that much progress. Because in the schools, all we have is a textbook. We open it up and then we read all kinds of grammar stuff. Yes, we listen to audios, but it wouldn't be an intensive kind of task. We would do it maybe 2 hours, 2 classes a week without that much of practice, without that much of practical stuff and things that we would truly need to speak to a person. So I would say that all those 9 years in school, it's pretty much wasted time, because also I had other students, other classmates that were also in the same class with me, and now they don't speak English at all. They understand a few words like love, go, I, like. Maybe that's the extent of it, because it's just simply not enough of knowledge. In the 9th grade, if we were to go back to my level, I could probably make a short text with a whole bunch of mistakes, a short one, maybe speak about I want to eat, I want food, I went store, things like that, with the thick accent in Russian as well. After 9th grade, I decided that I wanted to go to the States to study, and because I just didn't like the schooling system in Russia when it comes to universities, I realized that if I were to go to a school in Russia, I would have to be in school for the whole 4 years, not do anything extra, because just simply heavy studying and things like that. And then I heard from one of my tennis friends that their friend went to the States, and they described their experience, and I was like, you know what, that sounds about right. I want to do that. So in the ninth grade, I hired a private tutor to teach me English, because I already had a little bit of a foundation in grammar, a little bit of foundation in vocabulary, very, very minor. When I went to study with him, he would only speak to me in English, only switch to Russian for examples, or maybe to translate something when English was not enough. So me and him would speak English back and forth. And that, I think, was the first thing that broke the barrier for me in learning English, because I had to use English with him for me to communicate with him. Even about like everyday things. I would ask him where the restroom was in the school, like all that stuff. Not just within the lesson, but also outside of it too. We only spoke English, which I, clearly from the way we teach on YouTube, I don't think that that's the best way to do it across the board. I think it's a good way for when we practice something. I think that still we should use our native language to explain things, but then whenever we switch to talking, yes, that's when you need to use your Russian and use the language that you're learning in a conversation. But maybe it was great because I didn't have anyone else to speak to at that time, because the internet was not that developed yet. There were not as many language exchange apps and things like that. I think that in today's day and age, we don't have to do that as much because we have more opportunity to speak, Russian and English to other people, foreign languages to other people. So I started learning with him, and still, even though we spoke a lot of English to each other, our main areas of study was focused on grammar and focused on avoiding mistakes and not making a lot of mistakes. I think if all that time that we were speaking to each other, we would just speak and learn vocabulary and learn new words, that would be much better time spent. However, I think the approach when I was in school and approach when I was with him is a bit off, because I would only learn English when I would be face to face with the teacher. When you're a teacher, a lot of language learning happens behind the scenes. A lot of language learning happens when you're just by yourself, just, doing the words, studying vocabulary, flipping through flashcards time and time again to memorize words, or using different apps for words. Because languages, in my opinion, is like 70% vocabulary. All the rest, speaking, listening, and grammar is 30% combined. So a lot of language learning happens behind the scenes just by yourself. Repetition. But because I studied face-to-face with a teacher, they were forced to do something for the whole hour that we were together. So if you're a teacher and your student only learns like 3 hours within a week, you have to look good as a teacher in front of that student and do something productive, quote unquote, with the student. But if he would just give me 15 minutes of grammar and said, okay, 45 minutes, go ahead and study vocabulary, flip through flashcards, I'll be sitting here waiting for you. That would be the right approach, in my opinion. In my opinion, when it comes to teaching languages, that would be the right approach to learning. Would that be the right approach for teaching? Can a tutor be paid an hour rate for just 15 minutes of work? That's questionable. And that's why partially we are doing the online classes where a person can study with the materials, like act like a teacher, but then all the rest of the time he spends with vocabulary. And that's what we want to get to eventually with our platforms, with RB Fluent camps and things like that too. And so that's, I guess, besides the point. I'm getting off the story a little bit. Then maybe a year and a half in, we were studying, and then maybe after 7 months, I've realized that, you know what? This past half a year of us learning together with the teacher, we're not getting anywhere. I'm not getting much better in English. I cannot communicate much better. I've hit a plateau. I don't think there's anything else that I need to learn from him. Also, within about the same time, I went to Vancouver for me to practice English and for me to learn English firsthand. And similar thing happened in the Vancouver English School. We also learned a lot of grammar. We also did a lot of just extra stuff that is not important. I didn't have as much of exposure to speaking English on the street because I didn't have to do that. I would just buy stuff at a supermarket and stuff. So I didn't have to, talk to people as much. However, I got a good cultural, lesson, I guess, and I learned a lot when it comes to the culture of Northern America, very similar to American culture, and that I think was the best one for me out of that experience. Then I graduated from high school and I went to the US to study to go to university. Now, this is where it gets really educational for me when it comes to learning languages. I went to New York. I was studying at Hampton University. Hampton is in Virginia. For me to get to, Hampton, I had to fly into New York first. Now in New York, this event happened. I had to catch a bus to go to Virginia, and I couldn't find the bus station. I looked everywhere. I seemed to have the address right here on my phone, on a piece of paper as well. And I'm right here. It looks like I'm sitting in the right place, but there's no bus station. Only later did I learn that bus just simply came onto the corner of the street, picked people up, and then they went. But I asked maybe 10 people total, where is this bus station? And they would explain certain things to me, but I would understand maybe like 10%. And there I was. I've been learning English since I was 5. And at that moment, I was 17. 12 years of learning English with a coach, with a private tutor, all of that. And I cannot understand an American person explaining basic things like directions to me. What was I doing all these years? And that's when it hit me that something was really off. And then I got into university with a lot of trouble, with a lot of mistakes. People were there. I spoke bad English, but because I had a tennis team to help me out, there were also a lot of foreigners on the team from Spain, from other countries, I guess from UK, but that doesn't really count because they speak good English. So I had other people who were there to help me out. If I didn't understand something, they would do things for me. So that really helped. And then when I got there, for like half a year, I would say I was struggling with the language. I would understand what they were saying because there was a lot of fast things. People were talking simply fast to me and things like that. And then something happened. I went to a bar and we had a few beers. After I had maybe 2 beers, we were speaking about music. We were speaking about movies. I was talking about my point of view so smoothly and so freely. They understood me. I understood them. We had a great vibe. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I can speak super well. The next morning, I woke up, went to my friends gathering at a cafeteria, and there I was again. I was freezing up. I couldn't speak. I was mumbling words. I was not understanding what they were saying. And then I realized, why could I speak great English at a bar and not the next day when I was sober in front of the same exact people that I went to the bar with? That was all in my mental. I was just simply in my head way too much. Relax. Say whatever comes to mind first, as if you were drunk. You don't really filter words you're saying. You say whatever you want without thinking about grammar, without thinking about all of that. Just simply start speaking. That's when I've changed my perspective and I've changed my attitude toward it and I relaxed, and that's when my progress started going up and up and up and up and up. From that point on, I was not afraid to ask questions. I was not afraid to raise my hand in the classroom. I was not afraid to come to a teacher and speak. And they understood that I was a learner, that I didn't have my fluency level just yet, all of that. And that's how I started growing within, my English. That was the huge mindset shift for me. That's why we teach, Russian with a smile on our faces without this serious look about how to make proper sentences and this grammar rule and all of that. It just simply doesn't work for me, and I know it won't work for you. Well, for some of you, it might work, who likes the structure most, but I found that people like relaxed situations or relaxed states where it doesn't matter if you make a mistake. Because if you feel the pressure of, just mentally feeling the pressure psychologically, you doubling on the pressure of the language itself. of not being able to communicate well just yet. You are multiplying that pressure. And I have a friend who was also in the same school with me, same year, all of that. By the time we graduated, they didn't have as much of a change in their English because of that mindset. Their mindset hasn't changed to just simply relax and let go. And also, while I was in school, for the first year, I think I was just like a sponge. I realized that a lot of things that I've learned in school, for example, we were drilling grammar. In English, there's 12 tenses. Present, present simple, I do. Present continuous, I am doing. Present perfect, I have done. Present perfect continuous, I have been doing. Same for the past. I did, I was doing, I had done, I had been doing. Same for the future. I will do, I will be doing, I will have done, I will have been doing. All of those 12 tenses, we were drilling them. We had a text, and you could get this wrong, okay? It's either I did homework or I have done homework, right? Which one do you choose? I don't know. And then we were drilling that. When I got into the States, I realized that everybody is using the simplest way possible. Instead of saying, I had been doing homework for 5 hours, they would say, I was doing homework for 5 hours. I had been doing versus I was doing. In Russia, they would mark it as wrong if you said, I was doing something when it was supposed to be, I had been doing something. Nobody explained to us that you just choose the simplest way possible and everybody will still understand. In fact, when I got into the States, my grammar could have been better than a lot of natives that were there. However, could I communicate as well as they did? No. Could I talk about the same amount of topics that they could? No. So all that grammar that I had, out the window. It doesn't matter because it has almost no impact on how much I can communicate because I couldn't find the bus station with all that grammar knowledge. And then I became like a sponge. I realized that I just simply have to copy the way natives speak, the words they use, the tone they use, how fast they talk. And I just started mimicking that, copying. If I said a word for tea as tea, and they said tea, I will copy their T instead of mine. T. I'm just giving an example here, right? I would just simply forget about the way I pronounce words, copy theirs. Forget about the phrases that I use their phrases, use their communication, how they communicate, and use that myself. I became a sponge, and after the first year, I think I had almost no problem whatsoever anywhere else. And I would say that after my first year, then second, third, fourth, fifth year of my school, my English was getting a little bit better. Maybe mostly when it comes to the speed of speech and understanding, by listening, maybe a little bit of pronunciation too. Maybe if you watch my earlier videos, you'll see the different accent and stuff, but it won't be that bad. You still could understand me pretty well there too. So it was all within that first year of the mindset change of becoming a sponge. And now that's pretty much where I am now. I'm still learning English. I'm learning it as I speak. Of course, I do zero actual work with English. I mostly learn words by discovering them in different shows, talking to people, listening to music, all of that. So my learning is still continuing because I'm not, of course, a native speaker. And even in Russian, actually, I'm still learning new words. I'm still learning how to pronounce certain words better and things like that. So the learning never stops if you continue to communicate with others, you read books and all of that. And now let's get into the mistakes that I've made. Mistakes that my teachers have made and things like that you, if you're making them right now, you have to fix it, and then your progress will be just like mine when I had that mindset change like this. First mistake, don't overthink it. Yes, you're making mistakes. Yes, you are imperfect. Yes, you don't know all the words. Don't overthink it. Just start using your Russian now. The best thing you can do for yourself is to start communicating now so you can discover your shortfalls. If I had been talking to real people before coming to the States, I would probably find that bus station much faster. I would probably understand it much better. I was in a time of crisis, and in that crisis, I didn't have the tools to solve or to resolve the crisis because I didn't do the proper work before. Don't overthink it. Just get into it. Start speaking now. Reach out to natives. Don't be afraid. Because I understand that you want to say, oh, I'm not there yet. I have to study a little bit more. You can never be good enough for communication. You will always be bad. You will always be imperfect. If you compare the way I speak to the way my wife speaks, of course she speaks much better than me. And that doesn't stop me from communicating. And that didn't stop me when I was in school, still learning. So get into the communication now. Don't overthink it. It's not that hard. You just simply need to make mistakes, and that's how you're going to get forward. With each mistake, you make it, you fix it. You make it, you fix it. You make it, you fix it. Okay? Don't wait until you are in front of a person. Don't wait until you have to speak. Do it now when you choose to speak. Okay, so don't overthink it. Make mistakes and fix those mistakes after you make them. I think it's better to make 100 mistakes and fix all 100 than not do enough work and make 0 mistakes and fix 0 mistakes. Secondly, don't drown in grammar. Grammar is only a tool that you use to put your words together. If you don't have enough words, learn vocabulary first. Thirdly, relax. Relax. Don't overthink it. It comes to the first point, but don't demand too much from yourself whenever you speak. Demand a lot from yourself when you study, but when you speak, just let it go. Let it go and just go with the flow. Go with it, and then you'll make much more progress than that. And lastly, be a sponge. Learn from natives, learn how they do things, copy their pronunciation, copy their phrases, copy their vocabulary. And number 5, advice, join our Fluent camp where I can teach you that myself as well. Within the 8 weeks of intensive, you will learn a lot. It's going to be in the description, and I'll see you all there. And thank you for listening. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that you can take away something from this podcast. See you in the next one.